Partner of Delta Channel Services, and Warren Winterbottom, who is the U.S. Managing Partner of the Delta Channel. A quick look at the agenda. We're going to have the introductions with Rick, Warren, and John, a market overview and major trends. This is going to be handled by Delta Channel. They're going to be providing with some macro looks at major trends in SaaS and software as a service, operational benchmarks and sales compensation analyses, as well as some channel information. We've added that. A Q&A session. We'll be glad to answer your questions. If we are not able to get to all of your questions at the session, please feel free to email us. The contact information was on the previous slide, or call us. I can be reached at 860-388-7549 in the U.S. That's my mobile number. And I do like to talk to people on the phone. I am not a slave to social media. The deck that you're seeing today is going to be supplemented by a value-added version. And when this session is over, you will be receiving a link where you can download the complete value-added deck. It includes R&D numbers and additional channel information. We have a lot of information that we can put into a deck. We could run a presentation that went 24 hours straight without stopping. So we sort of cut it down a little bit. But this value-added deck will be provided to you when the session is over. A quick note about Softletter. In continuous publication since 1983. I have not been the managing editor since 1983. I took over in 2004. It's published twice a month online with new financial metrics, analyses, and case and operation studies, which focus on software studies, software companies, primarily SaaS and mobile. If you subscribe to Softletter, and we're going to have a special offer, it completes complete access to hundreds of articles and benchmarks, access to over 35 SaaS University online videos. That's a curated compilation of the best of our SaaS conferences, which have been held from 2007 to 2015. It has many hours of live presentations that were recorded at the time, very valuable information. You also receive, as a basic subscriber, a copy of my book, SaaS Entrepreneur, with its virtual DVD, which contains templates, checklists, and other materials to help you in your company, running your company. Quick note about our Softletter books and pubs. We provide a series of research analyses and reports that cover sales compensation, lead generation. We're currently creating a new staffing report. I'm a published author. I'm the author of In Search of Stupidity, over 20 years of high-tech marketing disasters, which is a list and analyses of things you should not do in launching your company. As I said, I'm the author of SaaS Entrepreneur, which is a book that discusses all the things that you should do to succeed in SaaS. I'm also a novelist, and this is my latest novel, Selling Steve Jobs' Liver, a story of startups, innovation, and connectivity in the clouds. For all of you startup mavens, dreamers, and people who want to ideate your way to mega success, it's a fun read. And you can obtain this book for free if you take our Softletter Company Staffing Survey, which is open. There's the link to the survey, but of course, when I send you your follow-up emails, we're going to give you links, and I really would appreciate it as a personal favor, and as a thank you for the information we're about to give you, if you would take that survey. By the way, if you do take the survey, you will receive the complete summaries of all the questions that we asked, as well as selected cross-tabulations. It's your opportunity to get a lot of valuable information on how to staff up as you grow your business. Here's a quick special offer. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I'll bug you more in our follow-up emails. But if you subscribe to Softletter as a partner member, you obtain complete access to SaaS University. You'll also get the following reports: sales compensation, financial, and lead generation. You'll also get a copy, and this is specific to this program and to this presentation, a copy of the new Softletter SaaS report, which is a very massive look at the industry and covers everything from financials down to customer engagement and onboarding. If you subscribe to Softletter as a premium member for $2.99, you can get a free copy of the sales compensation and efficiency report. That's due at the end of this month. It's in active production, and the data that you're going to be looking at today is derived from the numbers that we've gotten from that report. I'm going to now turn the session over to Delta Channel Services and John and Warren. I'm going to make them the presenter, and they're going to provide mega information on trends and developments in the software as a service industry. Guys, over to you.
Warren, this is John. Can you see the screen okay? I've switched over.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you changing the screen. And good day to everyone on the webinar. My name is Warren Winterbottom, and as Rick mentioned earlier, I'm the managing partner for Delta Channel Services in North America. I'd first of all like to give you a very brief overview of Delta Channel Services. For those of you who are familiar with us, I will be very brief, and for those of you who are not familiar with Delta Channel Services, we can provide you additional information directly at your request, or you can visit our website at www.deltachannels.com. A very brief history. Delta Channel Services was founded in 1995 in the United Kingdom by my colleague John Miller. We've been in business for over 20 years. We have offices in the United Kingdom, in North America, as in the United States, in North America, as well as in India. We also have colleagues and associates throughout the world, and we cover and have a presence in over 40 companies throughout the world. Our services primarily revolve around consulting, data gathering and research, as well as resourcing. Very briefly, in terms of consulting, we have a history of working with information technology companies, primarily assisting them with their channel development activities. Most recently, within the past few years, we became very familiar working with information technology companies in their quest to move into a cloud/SaaS model and helping them with their business transformations into these models. In terms of data research, we have done a series of surveys, as well as developed a series of contact lists where we have over 6,000 C-level executives identified in our database. We call it Deltabase, and we find that this information is really helpful to those firms who are planning to get into the SaaS cloud environment, and this particular information should help them with benchmarking their progress, as well as helping them sell solutions for their services. We're also involved in resourcing for our clients. We help with training in terms of sales and marketing personnel to help those personnel successfully go to market with their SaaS business. And we're also in the recruiting business, where we help our clients find and recruit executive talent as well as business partners. And speaking of partners, we're very pleased to be associated with an IT sales and marketing company by the name of EAMS, or EIMS. They were founded in the United Kingdom, and they currently have open an American office in Miami, Florida, where they have over 50 employees working for them. We also have a relationship with a company located in Seattle, Washington, here in the United States, a company by the name of Montclair, who is a major research company. They primarily focus on the SaaS and cloud business. Based on that brief overview, we've done some research to sort of set the stage for Rick's presentation today. And this is a very high-level look at what's going on in the cloud marketplace and how that affects the SaaS business. Starting in the lower left-hand corner of the slides, if you would kindly look at that circle and then move counterclockwise, it's interesting to note that in the next 3 years, it's projected by Gartner that the cloud spending will grow to about $315 billion by the year 2019. Also, to support that revenue growth, there's a projection by IDC Corporation that 58% of the companies plan to use cloud services, which is up from 24% in 2014. again, an optimistic look at the marketplace and an indication there is significant growth. If we take a look at the market today, and this is from the Synergy Research Group, their analysis indicates the top 5. And you can see that Amazon, in terms of cloud and SaaS services, is 31% of the market, Microsoft 9%, IBM 7%, Google and Salesforce about 4%. Also, it is indicated by Gartner that not only application software but infrastructure to support the cloud environment will triple from $50 billion to $50 billion in 2019, which again indicates a significant opportunity for those companies who wish to get into the cloud and the SaaS environment. And to set the stage for Rick and I'd like to point out that SaaS sales will double to $61 billion in 2019, and that is the projection by Gartner. And that is a big picture, high-level overview of the market. John has some very hot news that is currently happening in the market, and he'd like to share that with you now. John?
Thanks so much, Warren. Yeah, I mean, it is a hot market and there is news every day. I don't know which newspapers you subscribe to, whether it's the Times or Le Monde or the Figaro, but I guess just like a national newspaper, there's lots of hype and drama on the front pages, and you've got to dig into the detail to find out the true facts. And I think a good way of looking at this is that when we look into the detail, inside we will see a list of announcements of marriages, births and deaths. And if I can just very quickly go through those. Deaths obviously are very sad. We are seeing more SaaS companies not making it over the line. I was talking just yesterday about an example we were engaged with about a company coming to market with a social media solution heavily backed by venture capitalists. The development time slipped by 2 or 3 months. By the time they got to market, they were given effectively 3 months to hit the run rate. The take-up rate didn't happen, and the VCs pull the plug. And that's a trend we're seeing more of. In terms of marriages, if you like, merger and acquisition, yes, a lot of activity, and we'll look at some of the bigger acquisitions later. 2 main trends. One is obviously people are buying technology, people who perhaps are traditionally on-premise and they haven't got the skills or the architectures or the platforms are acquiring that technology by buying companies. But interesting trend as well recently, we're seeing companies coming in, SaaS companies coming in to buy customer base. And I'll just tell you a very, very quick anecdote. We were working with a family-owned software company, as it happened, based in Germany, been established 20 years, very much focused on the public sector, and we were asked to help them put together a strategy to move into the cloud. In fact, the CEO eventually said to me, if we don't do this, we're likely to die, with which I agreed. But the punchline of the story was within 6 months, they had been acquired by a North American company, not because they had at that stage got their cloud solution into the market, but the fact they had a plan and commitment and funding to do so. So I think we will see this trend of marriages carrying on. Obviously the bigger players like Oracle, it's the #1 priority strategically in terms of platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, putting a huge amount of focus and resource in that market space. We're seeing some of the other large players like IBM, as you can see here, really trying to catch up through acquisition. And we can also see later on that you know, their results in the cloud are growing, but at the same time that they're struggling in some other areas. And also trying to put Warren's numbers into context. You know, SaaS and SaaS companies are a wave, but they're not the only wave in town. I'm just going to refer you very briefly to IoT, which is coming down the tracks and will have a major impact. And I think later on Rick has got an anecdote about the waves that he sees. So, you know, final comment on this page, lots of hype on the front page, but we've got to realize, as we'll discuss later, that most people today aren't on the cloud or SaaS. they're somewhere on the journey, and so are the vendors. Talking about valuations, it's interesting. You'll see on this chart here from Battery Ventures that they've listed the valuation of, excuse me, the leading SaaS companies, some of whom are public, some of whom have been acquired. And I'm sure we've all got our anecdotes around this, but you know, if you look at a company such as Workday, valued at 15 billion, and to date have not made a profit. You will see that how this compares and contrasts with the market capitalization and valuation of companies like Oracle and IBM. One I haven't put up there is Amazon Web Services, who are valued at $170 billion. So a company that's only been around 10 years as valuable as the industry-leading giants. Will this last? Our prognosis is not. We're starting to see a flattening, and you know, going back to my previous chart, I think that investors, be they private or public, will be increasingly wanting to see a return on investment naturally and a move towards profitability. Rick will make some comments towards that later on, but yeah, let's watch this space. And perhaps another interesting way of looking at the market, Warren referred to our partners called Montclair over on the West Coast, and they for many years have been tracking born in the cloud, you know, new SaaS companies as well as hybrid companies. And it's not just you know, looking at pure revenue. They actually use a matrix of something like 60 different criteria, which includes innovation and, you know, how it's hosted in the cloud and so on. 4 or 5 years ago, it was called the SaaS 250. 2 years ago, it's called the SaaS 1000. During the course of last summer, we were working with them as they were updating, and they were tracking 1,500 companies, lots of updates, lots of churn, mainly due to deaths and marriages. But the analysis that we've done of all the players now who are out there with SaaS solutions, over 70% of them are hybrid. That means they were essentially on-premise businesses who are transforming, migrating, setting up separate divisions to move across. It obviously means there's a huge number of companies that are born SaaS and born in the cloud. But the little stat we've got to the side is, like Rick, we do a lot of benchmarking of companies, and we look at a number of critical success factors that will determine where you are on your journey, where you are on your transformation journey. And the data that we've collated, and a lot of it in Europe and a lot of it recently across ISVs and MSPs and SIs, kind of indicates where they are. So it's an average of averages, but it tells you how far they've got to go. So the 46%, if you like, very simplistically tells you most companies aren't even halfway there. And a lot of the traditional companies that we know are feeling the pain, you know, in terms of what we call the valley of death, in terms of moving to the land of a nice, consistent, recurring revenue. How do you balance that with the need to cut the cost of customer acquisition? A difficult balancing act, and Rick will illuminate more on some of the trends around direct selling and value-added resellers. So I'm almost out of time. You know, I've just illustrated a few of the very high-level figures that we look at in terms of valuations, mergers and acquisitions, progress on the journey. But you will see here quite an extensive list of other types of data that you're going to need to support this transformation. You know, in some geographies, of course, particularly in Europe, the move to cloud and ISV is slower with some in some countries, with some smaller traditional ISVs. I was talking to someone literally this morning who had just come back from a tour of Italy, Spain, and Turkey, and they were saying we're not seeing the demand. I guess it will happen probably sooner than many people expect. So a lot of this data, you know, quick plug for us, we can help source and provide for you. Again, we'll send you these charts, and again, we've got a little offer in there. But if we can help you with the consulting or the acquisition of data, we'd be very happy to do so. But I'd like to make Rick the presenter again now, so that we can really hear about the survey and the results of that survey. Rick, has that successfully gone across to you?
It has.
Okay, we can see your screen. That's great. Thank you, Rick.
Okay, I'm going to take it from here. Warren and John have provided you with sort of a macro trend industry. Now we're going to get derive into the gears and the tactical blocking and tackling that takes place when you're running your company. A quick note, all operating benchmarks are derived from public 10Ks, and we then adjust for fudging. By fudging, I mean if a company in its 10K, and by the way, it's not strictly 10K, our benchmarks do include international companies, and depending on the country, they may have something similar to the 10K, but in the U.S. the 10K is the public document that a company, publicly held company, must put out into a centralized database called EDGAR, and in which they tell you what their financials are and how they're doing. Occasionally they'll fudge things. For instance, they'll sometimes put G&A into sales and marketing. That is a no-no from our standpoint. And when we see things like that, we, how shall we say, adjust the information accordingly. The sales compensation information we'll be looking at is derived for our soft letter sales compensation survey. It's 270 participating firms, 60% of the participants were CXOs of some sort. Results were managed by the matrix system. Okay. The soft letter benchmark 60 are 60 publicly held companies, as we said, broken into 7 cohorts and the big 4. The big 4 are Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Oracle. Now, I hear some of you saying, well, Apple isn't really a software company, and the answer to that is we know we adjust information and reporting based upon our realization of that, but we also think that Apple is so important in this industry and has such an important software component to its business that we want to count them. We then break the market into SaaS and markets, sales and marketing, social platforms, mobile B2B and B2C. By the way, I think we're the only research company right now tracking these type of metrics for these type of companies, and on-premise. Why on-premise, you say? Well, we use it as a way to sort of look into the past and compare it to the future. We're not going to list the complete group of companies that we measure, but you can look at a complete list on the SoftLetter website, and this link, when you download the deck, is live and you will be able to do it, or simply go to the SoftLetter site and you can see a listing of the 60 companies that are in the benchmark 60. Okay, the operating benchmarks that we're going to be looking at today are revenue per employee, sales and marketing, and operating income. We did have research and development here, but the deck was growing too large and it's going to take too much time. But we do have some key highlights in the value-added deck, which you'll be able to download. Now let's begin with our first operating benchmark, and that's revenue per employee. This is a golden metric in SaaS, and the reason people like it is it gives you an at-a-glance performance at how your company's doing. It consistently proves that size really does matter. Larger companies almost always do better on RPE than smaller. It's a good indicator if a market segment is undergoing competitive pressures, and it allows you to measure your company's overall performance versus your competition's. And by the way, the way you derive a revenue per employee is simple. How many employees do you have? What's your revenue? Divide, and there you go. Not quite as simple as that, but that's the basic foundation for it. Let's take a quick look at our cohorts, and we'll see some interesting things. You'll notice the big 4, they have golden RPE numbers. They always have golden RPE numbers. Scale matters in software and SaaS. Large companies don't have to spend as much on sales and marketing. Their R&D expenditures as a percentage of overall revenue is lower. People don't realize that, but the bigger you get, the less you spend on R&D. Always happens. Let's take some of the cohorts. On-premise, notice those numbers are pretty good. Why are they good? Because on-premise is a placid place where legacy companies are munching on well-defined revenue fields, and things don't happen terribly exciting there, but unexciting can sometimes be good. Social networking. There's an interesting number. Social networking companies are performing pretty well. They don't have a lot of overhead in many respects. They have other problems. We'll be discussing those earlier, but they do well on RPE. Now, I have to warn you that mobile B2C and mobile B2B are Wild West cohorts. A lot of these companies are new. We've only been able to start tracking them at the public level because there's only recently been enough companies to make it worthwhile. So this is an area where you'll see wild gyrations in the numbers, and we're just warning you about that right now. SaaS verticals, pretty low. Why are SaaS verticals tend to be low? Because vertically owned companies that have gone public have a runway due to their IPO, but they have to deal with defined markets. They can't get wild and crazy the way, say, a Facebook can, or even a Twitter. They have to manage their cash and their financial assets carefully. SaaS enterprise. This is a brutal market. You'll notice 156. If the news got a little better, 202. But these are big companies in many respects slugging it out in big industries. And you have to spend a lot of money to make an impact, and that impacts your RPE directly. Sales and marketing, another place where it's brutal because you have some large companies who spend a lot on sales and marketing, thus lowering RPE. Let's take a look at some standouts. Facebook, with a 2015 RPE of 1.2 million, shows the power of the company. Facebook has become so powerful that we're considering moving it to the big five. And of course, we all understand that Facebook, of all the social marketing companies out there, was the first to come up with a truly powerful and revenue and profit-generating monetization model. SaaS sales and marketing, as we said, a brutal slugfest. Salesforce.com at 360K is a category standout, and we can understand that. They are the 1,200-pound gorilla in CRM. And also remember that Salesforce is also a powerful platform company in that a lot of people are doing a lot of development using Force and their various app systems and development creation facilities. SaaS verticals, as we said, a tough market, fragmented and competitive. On-premise, as we said, the happy classic case. Okay, let's spend some time now on sales and marketing. It's always of interest to all companies. Every one of you out there has sales and marketing expenditures. And we're going to make an interesting observation that many people, even those who have been in the industry for a while, don't always realize, and that is publicly held companies almost always spend more money on sales and marketing because of the pressure to perform. You went public to get a big wad of the public's cash. In return, the public expects you to drive your stock multiples as high as possible. Bet on the future. So to reach those multiples, you have to sell a lot. And one of the most effective ways to sell is to market and sell your product. So you will see that the publicly held companies spend seriously. Private companies are not under the same pressure and tend to spend considerably less. So something you should keep in mind. A 5 million SaaS company, it's maybe profitable, maybe doing well, but if it spends 10 to 15% of its total overall revenue in sales and marketing, is not at all atypical. Now, here's an interesting shift that's taking place in the industry, and it's one to keep a very close eye on. And that is, okay, let's assume that you're a $100 SaaS company, just keep the numbers simple. And for every $100 of your $100 in revenue that you've generated, you're spending $50 of that on your sales and marketing operations. Sales operations would include hiring your salespeople, management, providing them with the tools they need, running promotions, all of the things that involve with that type of operation. Of that $50, $40 would traditionally be spent on sales. The $10 would be spent on marketing. By the way, 10Ks do not require that you break out sales and marketing. There are ways to do it, but you have to do some analysis. Now, that's been the traditional split. 20% of the money that you have that you allocate to sales and marketing is spent by your sales group. Makes sense. But in SaaS, we're seeing a slow shift towards marketing. And so it might be $15, $20, even $25. What's causing this? Well, what's causing this is the nature of the SaaS sale is different from the traditional on-premise enterprise effort. There will be less travel, there will be less face-to-face meetings. These don't go away. We're going to be talking about that later, but there will be less of it. So that means something else is some other places where the money is being spent, and that's being spent in content management and marketing, in white papers, in a more engaging website, in different designs and approaches, in electronic direct marketing programs, in social media management and marketing, all of those things. So we are seeing SaaS companies, not on-premise, but SaaS companies beginning to spend more money of the total pie on their marketing. Let's take a look at the percentages. Sales and marketing, 31, 32% in on-premise. A typical medium for a publicly held on-premise company. This has not shifted in years. Social networking, again, they seem to be doing pretty well in that area. That's because they do tend to have, because they are social networking companies, the ability to leverage their internal marketing expertise and do pretty well at it. Mobile B2C, mobile B2B, the Wild West, they're all over the place. There are a couple of companies that are spending huge amounts in sales and marketing, others that are spending nothing. We keep an eye on these segments very carefully. SaaS verticals, also, because you're in a vertical market where you're constrained on what you can do and what you need to do, numbers stay reasonable. Look what's happening in SaaS enterprise. Why so high? 50%, 46%. That's a lot to spend on S&M because they're spending in big markets. And they got, relatively to other industries, big IPOs because they're addressing big markets. We want big sales. To get those big sales, we expect you to spend big time on your S&M efforts. So you will eventually drive those multiples of stock value and make the investors and the public happy, happy, happy. Sales and marketing, a brutal sector. Why is sales and marketing so high? Well, because the sales and marketing cohort is dominated by companies such as Constant Contact and Eloqua and Marketo and all those companies, and they believe in sales and marketing, and therefore they spend a lot on sales and marketing. And if you're in the Big Four, again, happy times brought to you by the qualities of scale. You don't have to spend a lot of time, as much money on sales and marketing because you have an established brands, you have established channels, and they scale up and they're working and in many cases pumping the cash into you, making you a happy company. Okay, let's take a look at sales and marketing standouts. Let's look at Apple. Boy, I'd like to be the head of Apple's sales and marketing effort. He's a hero. Think about it. Apple, I think, is maybe the top brand in the world. If not, it's in the top 3. How much money does Apple have to spend making people aware of Apple's existence as a company and its product line? Apple gets most of its expenditures, most of its brand awareness, and saves a huge amount of money by the press coverage and the attention generated by the public onto the company. So they don't have to spend a lot. Microsoft, on the other hand, is showing a very interesting figure. Well, Microsoft never got as low as Apple in the 7 to 6%. Under 9% was not atypical for them. But look how much they're spending now, 18 and 20%. Why? Well, there's several reasons. One is Windows is, its hegemony over the marketplace has been cracked. As a matter of fact, Windows is in a very interesting, Microsoft is in a very interesting position because while Windows dominates the desktop still and laptops, it's been cut off from the future. Windows Phone, mobile, whatever you want to call it, is dead. It has failed. Microsoft has no position in the fastest growing segment of the marketplace. Smartphones and then tablets, depending on how you define a tablet. It has to now compete in areas such as infrastructure. It's got to go head-to-head with Amazon, AWS, with Salesforce. Azure is a powerful system and has a lot of capabilities, but you've got to spend money to make people aware of it. So this is a fascinating metric, and we expect to see Microsoft having to spend some serious coin where previously it did not in the previous years. Here's an example of what looking at S&M numbers can show you. In the U.S., there's a company called Angie's List. It's a company that basically, on a paid basis, allows you to log onto their site and get recommendations for contractors and services local to your company. Companies under tremendous pressure from the freemium models that have sprung up to compete with it. And to fend off its competition, Angie's List spends tremendously on sales and marketing. If you're in the U.S., you're constantly seeing TV ads for the company show up. It's not cheap to advertise on TV, so that's where that's one of the reasons why you see such a high expenditure. Operating income. Okay, operating income is for those of you whose favorite color is red. Operating income is an underlying metric that helps measure profitability. It is not uncommon to see negative numbers in contested segments. The OI number does not include investments in other companies, taxes, lawsuits, whatever. It's quite possible, by the way, for a company to show positive OI and yet not be ultimately profitable. In the U.S., this is often called Hollywood accounting. You know, you're an actor, you go, oh gosh, I'm going to be in this movie, and they say, well, how would you like to be paid? Would you like to have a percentage of revenue, or would you like to have a percentage of profits? And actors who didn't know any better used to go, I'll take a percentage of the profits. They're going to be huge. This film's going to be a big hit. And the film was a big hit. And lots of money was made, but somehow, amazingly enough, no profits. How does that happen? Okay. Now, this is a bit of an eye chart. I apologize, but because you have so many cohorts in the negative, it's a bit hard to show it. The Big Four, let's look at the Big Four. Ooh, look at their operating income, solidly profitable, the advantages of scale. Sales and marketing, not solidly profitable. SaaS enterprise, big gyrations there because these companies are spending huge amounts, and sometimes you get some home runs. A lot of times you have a lot of strikeouts. SaaS verticals, tough marketplaces, but not showing a lot of losses. There's several companies that are doing well, but there's a couple of them that have, how shall we say, adjusted the median downward. Mobile B2C, mobile B2B, wild country, gyrations all over the place as these companies jockey for position. Social networking, down because, well, we'll talk about that in a second. On-premise, well, as I said, happy, placid place. Now let's look at some of the standouts in operating income and dig beneath what's going on here. As we know, Big Four is good. Sales and marketing is tough. Only Constant Contact has positive numbers at 6% and 3%. Salesforce is not profitable at 7% and 4%, minus 4%. By the way, this is not uncommon in publicly held companies. The reason that you go IPO in many cases is not because you're profitable or even hope to be profitable in the short term. The reason that companies go IPO is to get a big wad of capital to buy market share, continue to buy market share where you become the big dog in a market, and eventually you reach a tipping point where cash flow and expenditures all come into balance and you start making lots of money. Take a look at HubSpot. They're at minus 42 and minus 44. That's a lot of red ink. Now they do have an IPO. They have IPO cash in the bank, but it's something to keep an eye on. SaaS enterprise is just bloody. Again, big markets, lots of expenditures being made, lots of expenses. It costs money to hire lots of salespeople. It costs money to do lots of marketing, and that throws your numbers into the red. Okay? Verticals, as we said, typically have less money to lose. Just an interesting story on HubSpot. I'm not sure if you're following an industry development, but they hired a guy who was known in the U.S. as Fake Steve Jobs. He ran this very popular blog, which was a parody of Steve Jobs, and it was extremely funny at many times. A lot of people went to look at it. Fake Steve Jobs' identity was a secret. He was finally outed as a guy by the name of Dan Lyons, a longtime technology journalist. To make a long story short, HubSpot hired him. I'm not exactly sure what they were thinking, but they hired him. And he worked there for about a year and a half, then promptly left the company and wrote a pretty nasty book about their internal operations. And one of the things he makes a big deal about is that HubSpot's not profitable. Well, he should know better because there are lots of companies out there that have taken a long time to go become profitable. Let's all think of a big giant in the industry, Amazon. Amazon's still not quite consistently profitable, and that's after being in business for 20 years. Facebook, Sitting pretty in social networking, 40 and 36%. Why is Facebook doing so well? Because they are the first social networking company to come up with a solid monetization model for their hundreds of millions or billions of users. Now, Twitter is grim. If you've been following this company's history, while it has a lot of people tweeting like crazy, the Trump campaign is basically run on Twitter in the United States, an amazing phenomenon. It's not making any money. But the good news is that Twitter can stay at their current burn rate. They can stay in business for an estimated 300 plus years because they, when they went public, got $2.1 billion in IPO cash. So while they haven't figured out their model, and the stock isn't doing well, reflecting some of these problems, nonetheless, they still have a fair amount of time to figure it out. On-premise software, boring can be good. Okay. We're done with the benchmarks. We didn't cover R&D. That is in the value-added deck. We're going to take a quick look at what's taking place in SaaS sales organizations. Very important factor for any company, especially publicly held companies, but I can't think of any company actually where sales aren't important. A quick look at the Salesforce organization. This is interesting. Regional remains the most popular model. You'll notice that verticalization is gaining in popularity. Now, I don't have previous years in this deck, but SoftLetter has basically been tracking, and myself personally have been tracking first the ASP industry and then the SaaS industry since 2001. I wrote in Search of Stupidity, the first edition, about the collapse of the ASP model. In the second edition of In Search of Stupidity, at that time the SaaS model was climbing back to life, and I was discussing why. In 2006, SoftLetter initiated the first look at SaaS metrics. I mean, we were literally the first, ahead of everyone. And as a result, we have an ability to look back into the past and combine and analyze the past performance with current and draw some interesting conclusions. So regional in 2007 or 2008 would have been by far the most popular model. But over time, SaaS companies have evolved and learned verticalization is picking up, named accounting is picking up, and regionality organizations are slowly losing ground, though we don't expect them to ever disappear. Sometimes it just makes sense to organize your company that way. It often depends on the markets you're addressing and the type of products you're offering and services. Direct sales force. In 2007, this probably would have been 85 to 90%. But you'll notice that it's still by far the most overwhelming model to sell products, dependent, of course, on what types of products you're selling. If you're a vertical market, you may not need a direct sales force. Telesales may be what you need. We're not covering telesales today. But if you're selling into the enterprise, if you're selling major products, you have to have a direct sales force. There has been some shrinkage, but we never expect direct sales forces to go away. And the reason is that before someone's going to spend a lot of money and spend a lot of time and give you a big check, they want to meet you. You're going to have to sometimes meet key stakeholders and people whose interests are involved in the sale of your product or service. So that personal touch is not going away. In SaaS, this is an interesting trend that we'd expect to see, but the idea of having a separate team that pursues renewals as opposed to a force that's dedicated to direct sales is a natural evolution. Again, years ago, this concept of a separate sales team for renewals would have been almost absent from from SaaS companies, from software companies, but in SaaS it's increasingly an important and standardized way to break down your sales efforts. Time to close of direct new sales. We always have been fascinated by this metric because in SaaS the sales cycle has always been projected to be slower. Self-education, self-reviews, content, access, and education are very much part of the SaaS business model. So while direct sales doesn't go away, it's expected to perform at a much higher rate of speed. And we indeed see this. And if you'll notice, if you aggregate the numbers, you'll see that most major SaaS sales close in 120 days or under. In the old days of on-premise enterprise sales, 12 to 18-month sales cycles were not uncommon. Those don't go away in SaaS, particularly if you're dealing with an enterprise-level sale. but the medians are always much lower in SaaS. You want to be looking at this carefully to get an idea of where you think your company should become in this range. Primary compensation model. I don't think it's any surprise to any of us that it's 80% base plus commissions, and then the secondary model would be 13 base plus bonuses. What's interesting about this slide is at the beginning of the industry there was a lot more experimentation. Attempts to do salary only, commission only were implemented. For the most part, they were failures. I have to tell you that if you tell someone that you're a commission-only SaaS company, you're probably going to be thought of as a boiler room operation, and you need to keep that in mind. But the vast number of companies are either base plus bonuses and base plus commissions, and we've often found, even in companies that claim that they're salary only, that they're lying. What they're really doing is trying to hide their bonus structure under a salary cap. I don't want to get into why some companies like to do salary only, but the reality is that you are going to probably be doing a base plus commission model. I wouldn't waste a lot of time trying to change that or adjust it. A quick look at SaaS sales plan achievement. We'd like to know, did you make plan, didn't make plan, exceeded plan? Now, 50% of SaaS companies did not meet the sales plan. This actually is an improvement over the previous years. Usually the numbers of no, we didn't make plan range between 55 to 60%. We're seeing this begin to drop. And the reason is that as the industry has matured, companies have been smarter. They're better able to measure how their companies are going to perform. Notice that yes, 25% achieved plan, yes, exceeded plan. Let's take a look and see how well they do in exceeding plan. By what percentage did you exceed plan? And notice the vast majority of companies are at 11 to 25%. This is what we would expect. 12%, 41 to 55%. No one. We did ask, did you do better than that? Almost no one did, so we don't have that in there. Less than 10%. So these are numbers that we would expect to see. I have to tell you that when we see a company that claims that it exceeded sales plan by 100%, we normally don't believe them. That usually involves reworking your original yearly sales plan to try to, in some cases, fool people into believing that you're doing better than you actually did. These numbers, if you've done your research and have a realistic understanding of your marketplace, 11 to 25%, 26 to 40, these numbers reflect a real effort to achieve excellent performance. Okay, we're moving along here. I think we're pretty much on time. Let's take a look at SaaS channels. This is information of great interest, of course, to any of you who are looking to build a channel. Now, let's talk about why companies build channels in the first place. For most companies, when you launch, building out a channel is not your primary concern. Most companies, and this includes both on-premise and SaaS companies, focus on selling and colonizing their core markets. Let's understand who our basic customers are. Let's learn how to sell to them. We're not going to focus initially on channel development. So in 2007, how many SaaS companies had a channel? Yeah, maybe 15, 20%. You'll notice that this is changing, especially in regards to VARS, value-added resellers, which are really the sweet spot for true resellers, people who bring real value and make a major investment in understanding and marketing and selling your product to the marketplace. So yes, 46%. This number has continued to increase because as a company grows, it discovers that there are many opportunities that are potentially out there, but they're not staffed or they don't have the mindset to address them all. So this is where VARs come in, and interest in VARs and under consideration for the first time clearly broke the 50% barrier. 40% no. Now let's take a look at how many VARs. It's always interesting to see how companies are doing with the number of VARs. The rule of thumb, which we believe remains in effect today, that for most companies, if you have a lively VAR program, the maximum number of VARs that you can effectively manage is about 100, maybe to 150. After that, it just becomes too much. You don't have the resources. True VARs are needy creatures. They need to be regularly supported. They need lots of information. They need lots of interface and work with your company. It's hard to manage 100 different companies such as that on that type of basis. When we're talking about affiliates and recommender programs, we do have some numbers in there on the value-added deck. That's a different story. But we're talking true VARs here. So you will notice that the biggest cohort is 6 to 25. That's actually grown. We used to have the 1 to 5 used to be the major component, but now they're equalizing. And we expect to see the numbers continuing to shift towards larger numbers. The 26 to 50, 17%, we've never seen the numbers that high. So what you're seeing here is the evolution of the market of SaaS companies to accept and like VARs. And by the way, one of the nice things about SaaS and your channel is, unlike in the days of on-premise, it's almost impossible for you to be disintermediated from your customers the way that resellers traditionally always like to do. And you're always in a position to understand how their customers are doing with your system. After all, you control, manage, and track the infrastructure. They can't prevent you from learning. They can, through branding programs, hide the fact that you're the person that's providing the underlying service, but they can't hide the information and the customer from you ultimately. And that's a really nice thing for you resellers, for you software companies out there. Okay, we're moving along. We've got a good pace here, and I'm just going to quickly talk about one thing. And when we do our soft letter seminars, we like to provide a glimpse into the future. We did that for the industry with SaaS, and we're going to do it now for Beyond SaaS. And by Beyond SaaS, there's a new industry movement developing rapidly. You're going to be reading more about it in the next few months. You get a heads up here today. And that's what we call the rise of device-independent computing. There are 2 points to this, what we call the portable workspace and an extensive layered infrastructure for device service management. I actually write about this in SaaS Entrepreneur. I provide a case study, and we talk more about this and some of the models that are rising in the industry. There's also a 2-part article on SoftLetter that you should read that discusses what we're talking here now in greater detail. But to make a long story short, what the device-independent movement and portable workspace is this. In the future, you're not going to be tied to any particular device, and you're not going to be tied to any particular OS or platform. You are going to have all of your computing assets, the programs that you use, the digital assets that you've procured, the services that you need, the customizations that you've applied. All of it will be stored in a virtual container or desktop that resides in the cloud, and you will be able to point to any device in any location and of any sort and transfer that workspace to that device. The portable workspace will configure itself for display and assets that are appropriate to the to the hardware and infrastructure and software infrastructure in which it must work, allowing you to do what you need to do and then move to a completely different device or a completely different environment, and that workspace will come with you. As I said, we write about more about what's driving this on the SoftLetter site. Read that article. Read more about it in SaaS Entrepreneur. But this is going to be a major development, and it's the adoption of SaaS and mobile applications that is pushing this new movement. Okay, I think we've come to the end of my section. We've gone through these nuts and bolts. So we're now open for questions. Anyone has some questions, we'll be glad to answer them. We've got about 5 minutes or so. We can go a little longer. And of course, if we're not able to answer all your questions today, you can contact us to follow up.
Rick and John, we do have a few questions, and the first question is, what are the biggest causes of failure and or slow growth for SaaS companies?
Okay, well, maybe I can have a swag at that. Just 2 or 3 thoughts come into place. I think the first is, even almost before you start, a lot of good work needs to be done around the addressable market opportunity, and certainly value propositions and differentiators. It's already getting a crowded market. There's certain sectors that, if you're thinking about bringing a solution to market, it may already be too late. I mean, quick anecdote, we were doing some work for a a client that had something kind of in the project management collaboration space, and when we did some profiling actually using the Montclair list, we found that there were already about 150 similar companies or applications in market. So that would certainly be one. And I'll go back to the other one that I talked about, which is this time to market and getting across the valley of death. A lot of people approach it sort of sequentially in terms of let's focus on the platform and technology, and there's some fantastic tools out there now to get your technical solution, the application ready. But if you haven't thought about how you're going to land and expand, how you're going to knock out competition, particularly if you're a pure SaaS play, then you've got major problems. So those would be two. I could go on for hours, but there are a couple for you, Warren.
Thank you, John. Another question we have is, I thought that... Go ahead, Rick. Do you have a comment?
I want to make a comment. And here's something else, that if you're a SaaS company, you have to be really on top of this, and that is make sure that from the moment your SaaS product goes live, that you have integrated analytics, in other words, the ability for you to track system usage, and that you've integrated community directly into your product. In the first chapter of SaaS Entrepreneur, I hammer on that because the SaaS applications naturally concentrate people with common interests, business problems, challenges, and goals into a same virtual space. And because of the nature of SaaS, you're in a position to track product usage and generate and glean insights from that usage that was never possible with on-premise products. If you understand how people are using your product, you are in a position to develop tremendous networks effect data, which you do many times, sell or market back to your customer base, and a community of customers, as we call it, is a tremendous marketing asset to your product. So keep that in mind as well.
We have time just for one more question, and that question is, as a new potential ISV to enter the SaaS community, what are the 3 significant challenges that I will face?
Okay, well, I guess
you state that
my
one.
comment is... Yeah, sorry, Rick. My comment, I guess, is just the converse of what we said. You really do need to have an integrated plan. I've seen, in fact, I was talking to a company this morning who have really got a software development plan, an organizational model. They've got one team working on that, and a separate team working on business operations and sales and marketing. So you've got to give yourself a chance and be joined from the hip on day one, definitely. And I think the others also apply. I've seen a SaaS company fail because they really picked a poor cross-section in terms of what the sample market opportunity was, and when they actually launched, it wasn't real. So there's probably, in total, final comment, we've identified 20 critical success factors, and obviously they need to be prioritized, but you really need to look at all of them. And more details of that on our website.
Rick, do you have any follow-on comment?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of obvious answers like don't run out of cash, don't have the founders to decide that they're going to sleep with each other's wives, or husbands, as the case may be. I've seen examples of some of this stuff, but I will, on a more serious note, say that, again, the ability of SaaS to concatenate customers and allow you to use them as a word-of-mouth marketing vehicle and to analyze usage, if you've got that from the get-go, you can quickly learn what's working, and even more important sometimes, learn what is not working, giving you the ability to adjust your business model, not on a real-time basis, but as close to it as you can possibly get. So I would say that is a factor that, again, goes back to fundamental success.
Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you, John, and participants. Thank you very much for your questions. Those questions that were submitted and weren't answered, we will answer them in follow-up emails. Ladies and gentlemen, we reached the conclusion of our webinar, and I'd like to thank you for your participation, and I would like to turn it over to John and to Rick for their final comments.
Thanks, Warren. Yeah, and thank you to the attendees. Hopefully you found it useful. You'll be hearing from Rick shortly after this webinar with follow-up. Rick, do you want to explain what's coming down the line for them?
Yes. what's going to be coming down the line is we're going to send you a link so you can download the deck. We have made a recording of this session, so you will be able to return to it and listen to it again at your leisure and focus on those sections that you found the most useful. We are going to be holding some follow-up sessions on the results from our SaaS survey. That may be even a two-parter because there's so much data that's going to come out of that. We're also going to be in the future, we don't have a date set for this, for our staffing survey. This will be the first time I think that any company has done this in the SaaS space, and we think that there's going to be a lot of interesting insight and information coming out of that. Again, I would urge you, when we send you the follow-up emails, to please take our SaaS staffing survey. You don't simply have to be an attendee at a webinar, but you can be a part of it. It will be greatly appreciated. And we'll also remind you of our specials and urge you to take advantage of them. But thank you very much for coming here. I hope you found it useful and the data timely and of help to you in building and succeeding with your business.
Thank you all, and goodbye.